I have here a table with 4 major differences between Thrasymachus's point position and Socrates. So this is the question whether justice has an internal dimension. And Thrasymachus wants to say no. Justice is mere external behavior. What we think about it and the spirit in which we act has nothing to do with whether we are just or not. And Socrates tries to say that there is an internal dimension into it, because obeying the law, sometimes when a law is just, we shouldn't obey the law just because we cannot get away with breaking it, but because we understand that it is the right thing to do.
He never properly explains why it's the right thing to do, though, and I always found that a little bit frustrating.
Okay.
Because essentially Thrasymachus is pitting society as a kind of war of all against all, just a kind of covert war where everyone is pretending to follow the rules until they can get away with not following the rules. But Socrates, in Plato's dialogue, never explains that actually the common restraint on all is actually sort of consideration for one another and for one another's property and for one another's accomplishments. And actually it turns society into a cooperative venture rather than this sort of, warlike venture. And he doesn't explain that really. And I found that kind of frustrating.
So I think that this is a feature of moral thinking and moral debates, because at the end of the day, all justification has to come to an end at some point. And in the rationalist tradition that Plato is a part of, there is this idea that we stop with self-evident propositions. So there is no way in which an ethical debate can function otherwise. We have people who ultimately say, this is where my spade turns, as Wittgenstein would say. I can't go any further. To me, it seems obvious.
But the problem that he has with Thrasymachus is that he doesn't actually address the presuppositions that Thrasymachus is working upon.
Yes.
That's why I feel that he's not as effective at essentially convincing Thrasymachus that actually what you're doing is wrong and destructive, instead of being sort of wholesome and cooperative and constructive. And that's just my observation on it.
No, I think that it's a very insightful comment to make, because the thing is that this is a sort of tragic thing about moral debate, that it is to an extent exclusionary. We cannot address everyone indiscriminately. So I'll give an example in epistemology. There's no way in which a person who thinks that we can gain knowledge can convince a skeptic. The skeptic will constantly ask, why?
They can, yeah.
So the thing is that there is no common ground to have a rational debate about that very topic with a skeptic if you're a epistemic dogmatist.
But in this case, Thrasymachus is happy to have the debate with Socrates, and they are talking about the same subject. So Socrates could have gone, a layer deeper into Thrasymachus and analyzed because he never gets Thrasymachus to really properly sort of describe the purpose of justice. I always feel that it's kind of a surface level analysis of it.
Yes. And I think that this is, unfortunately, I think that this is again a feature of discussion. And the thing is that Thrasymachus seems to participate in a debate, but he actually makes this exclusionary move first, because he jumps into the discussion and says, Socrates, tell me what justice is, and don't tell me that it is righteousness, duty, interest, profit.
But that's fair. That's actually fair, because what are these words to someone who doesn't believe that such a thing exists, right? And so this is what I mean. Like, the attack should have been on Thrasymachus's core assumptions on his own ground. He assumes that all of society is actually a cynical war where everyone's just side-eyeing each other to pick their pockets, right? And so what Plato is presenting is actually, no, it can actually be that everyone's helping one another instead, and that's what the laws are for.
I really don't know what to make of it. And there is, again, scholarship for centuries about the topic. The way it seems to me is that Thrasymachus is not convinced by Plato, and Plato understands this. And it could be the case that Plato is trying to convey the message that you cannot address everyone indiscriminately, and some people will not agree with you. This doesn't mean that you're wrong, but the thing is that if you think that if you have fundamentally clashing starting points, such as in the case of epistemology, knowledge can be had, and on the other hand, knowledge can't be had. And in the moral case, if we have this idea that justice is moral, is connected with moral, and on the other hand, a person says, no, I won't accept anything like that. There is a question as to whether there is enough common ground for a rational debate to be had. Now, of course, they are engaging in a debate because they are in public sphere. But
but that's not about the rational side of the debate.
Yes,
that's about winning.
And
Thrasymachus does make moves like that.
Yeah.
During this conversation as well.
Yeah.
In fact, at one point, he gets kind of sarcastic towards Socrates. And he's just like, oh, you're just going to say whatever you like anyway. Don't worry about me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that this is in a sense tragic, but I don't see any other way, because it seems to me that moral disagreement is a pervasive feature of all cultures.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do when we have such clashing?
Well, Socrates actually in the dialogue takes it quite well, to be honest.
Yeah.
He doesn't return in kind, and he just kind of just takes it on the chin.
Yeah.
So fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So let us move forward into the rest of the book and talk a bit about its methodology. So the thing is that Plato seems to me to say, and this may be interpreted as being somehow bad, that basically you cannot rationally address a sophist. This may seem a bit authoritarian, but he wants to say that basically you cannot rationally address a sophist. So I am going to talk to another audience, because in book one, the only thing that he tries to do is to tell Thrasymachus that he's confused in his own formulation. But as you very well said, this is not enough to prove to Thrasymachus that justice has a moral dimension. Thrasymachus could just come back with increasingly more sophisticated formulations of his position, but if his starting point is that I won't accept justice as having a moral dimension, there is no such debate to be had about that topic if you do think that justice can have a moral dimension.
I mean, you are correct, but I can't help but feel that there's something that underpins that for Thrasymachus, because otherwise we seem to be rendering Thrasymachus in a kind of sophistic way to say that there's nothing to his position. It's merely just he's evil and ignorant. I think that actually he's made a bunch of presuppositions based on things that he has observed that you could go back and address, but he doesn't. So
I think there is a danger here that there's a problem with exclusion in moral debate. The question is whether it's something we can do away with, but there is a problem. And this is something that we can see, especially in the case of moral fanatics. We have people, it is very easy, if you have the majority with you, to claim that, this is morally correct. My rational intuition points me towards these propositions as self-evident, and people who disagree with it and do not accept them, I cannot have a rational debate with them. So the only thing I can do is basically exercise power against
stigmatize them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you, and I think that this is something that's on your mind, that if we have this template of thought, we are going to be led to people who are going to say, well, I'm the ruler, I can get the majority with me, and I can basically think that I'm just morally justified in imposing my moral intuitions on those who disagree with me.
And in a way, doesn't that kind of prove Thrasymachus's point?
In what way?
That justice is just about power. If you have the power to be able to excise anyone who disagrees with you, because of this fundamental position that you both start with, which is an assertion that we can't agree, then, I mean, there is a sense in which Thrasymachus has a point there.
he does. And I see this. But the question is whether we can do away without it. Because what is the alternative? We could say that politics, in a sense, is a comparative science. What is the alternative? And at the moment, or at least let's say in the 20th century, we have if you'd like, a dialectic or a polar oppositions between, on the one hand, moral skepticism, which leads into value nihilism and the belief that life has no matter and community has no matter and there's no value. And on the other hand, moral fanaticism. So the question is if we can appeal to our wisdom to find a middle way. So I do agree with you. It is very dangerous. But can we do away with it? Because it's like fire. The way I think of it, it's like fire. Fire is really dangerous. If we're incapable in using it, we risk being burned. The question is, can we do away without?
Can we do without it? Yeah, and the answer is no. Yeah. Okay.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.